Hello and welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you. I spent the entire morning looking at this stack of papers we have for today.
The big one.
It is a big one. I was, drinking my coffee, reading through all these documents, and my head just started to hurt.
I get it. It is a heavy stack today. We are definitely not looking at light reading.
No, we are not. We're looking at court cases. We're looking at the United States Constitution. Specifically, we're looking at something called the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
This is the big rule that says you have free speech.
It's maybe the most important idea in the whole country.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It can be a headache. Lawyers use a very special kind of language.
Oh,
they use
yeah.
these huge 5-syllable words when, a small word would do just fine.
Exactly. They don't say stop, they say cease and desist.
Right.
They don't say rule, they say statute. It honestly feels like a secret code. And that's a problem because these rules, they're for us. They're for normal people.
If you don't understand the rules, you can't know your rights.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
So here is our mission today. We are going to be translators.
I like that.
We're going to take these complicated, messy, difficult Supreme Court cases, and we are going to strip away all the fancy words. We are going to explain the rules of speaking using very, very simple English.
I love that idea. Let's break it down into, building blocks.
Building blocks. I like that. But before we get to the rules, I have a question. A lot of people, I think, they think free speech is magic. They think it means I can say anything I want, anywhere I want, and nobody can stop me. Is that true?
No. That is probably the biggest myth out there.
Okay.
I mean, just think about it. Can you walk into a hospital operating room and start screaming at the doctors
Yeah.
while they're doing surgery?
No, of course not. They'd kick you out, and they should.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you walk onto a military base and start taking photos of secret plans and shouting them out loud?
No way. You go to jail, a very serious jail.
So obviously there are limits. The government can sometimes put tape over your mouth, so to speak. The question, and this is really the million-dollar question, is when? When is the government allowed to silence you?
I like to think of it like driving a car. Usually you have a green light, you can go, you can speak. But sometimes there's a red light, you have to stop.
That is a perfect way to see it. Most of the time the light is green, but there are very, very specific red lights.
Okay, let's start with the biggest green light of all, the golden rule, the most important rule in the whole book.
The golden rule. In lawyer speak, this is called content neutrality.
Content neutrality? Okay, that is already a lawyer word. Let's unpack that.
Okay, so content. Content just means the topic. What are you talking about? Are you talking about dogs, cats, the weather? Are you talking about the president? Are you talking about God? That is the content.
Okay, and neutrality, that just means not taking sides, right?
Exactly. So you put it together. The rule is the government cannot stop you from speaking just because they do not like the topic. They can't play favorites.
Can you give me a real-life example of that? Because it sounds nice in theory, but does it actually, happen?
Oh, it happens all the time. Let's look at a really famous story. This is a case called Reed v. the Town of Gilbert. It happened back in 2015.
Okay, tell me about the town of Gilbert.
Gilbert is a town in Arizona, and in this town, there was a small church. The pastor was a man named Clyde Reed. Now, this church didn't have its own building. They were renting space at a local school.
So they were kind of a mobile church. They moved around.
Right. So every Sunday, Pastor Reed would get up super early. He would go out to the street corners near the school and stick these little signs in the grass.
And what did the signs say?
Just simple stuff. Church meeting today, 9:00 a.m., turn here. Just directions.
Like a garage sale sign or yard sale this way?
Exactly like that. But the town of Gilbert had a rule book for signs. A big, long rule book. And this rule book was very strange. It had different rules for different topics.
Different topics for signs. How does that work?
Well, for example, if you had a political sign like vote for Smith, your sign could be huge. It could be up to 32 square feet. And you could leave it up for months at a time.
Okay. So politics gets a big, bright green light.
A very green light.
Yeah.
But if you had a directional sign like Pastor Reed's church sign, the rule was totally different.
Oh, here you go.
The sign had to be tiny, only 6 square feet, and you could only put it up 12 hours before the church service started.
12 hours. And when did he have to take it down?
1 hour after the service was over.
Wow. That is incredibly strict. So the politician can leave his big sign up all year, practically, but the pastor has to run around town putting signs up and taking them down every single Sunday.
You got it. And Pastor Reed, he said, this is really hard. I'm not a young man. I can't be doing this every week. Why is the rule different for me?
Yeah, that's a good question. And what did the town say? Did they just hate the church or something?
No, not at all. The town said, look, our goal is just to make the town look nice, aesthetics. We don't want thousands of signs cluttering up the place. They said, political signs are, very important for democracy, so we let them be big. But your sign is just directions. It's not as important, so it has to be small and temporary.
I have to admit, I kind of see their point. It doesn't sound evil. They're just trying to organize the city.
It sounds reasonable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the Supreme Court looked at this and said, absolutely not.
Why?
Because think about what you have to do to enforce this rule.
Okay.
Imagine a police officer standing on the sidewalk. He sees a sign. To know which rule to apply, what does he have to do first?
He has to read the sign.
He has to read it.
If it says vote, he just walks away. But if it says church, he gets out his tape measure and starts writing a ticket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The officer is looking at the content. He is treating the sign differently based on the words written on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Supreme Court said that is illegal. That is the one thing the government cannot do.
So the government has to be blind to the message. It has to ignore what's being said.
Yes. If they want to make a rule about signs, the rule has to be for all signs. They can say, no signs bigger than 10 feet. That's fine.
Because that applies to everyone.
Right, but they cannot say political signs are okay, but religious signs are bad. They can't pick winners and losers in the, marketplace of ideas.
That is a really, really strong protection.
It's the strongest one we have. And when the government tries to break this rule, when they try to target a specific topic, the court uses a special test. Lawyers call it strict scrutiny.
Strict scrutiny. That sounds intense, like a really scary teacher watching you take a final exam.
It is the hardest test in all of American law. Let's call it the super strict test. If the government passes a law that targets a specific topic, they had to pass this test, or the law is gone.
And how do you pass the test? Is it hard?
It is almost impossible. It's designed to be failed. You need two things. First, the government needs what's called the compelling interest.
Okay. Translate that for me.
It means a huge emergency-level reason, a matter of life and death.
So not just, we want the town to look pretty.
No, it has to be something like, we need to stop a nuclear bomb from going off, or we need to stop a plague from spreading.
Yeah.
A massive, undesirable reason.
Okay, a huge reason. What's the second part?
The second part is that the law must be narrowly tailored.
Narrowly tailored, like a suit that fits perfectly, not too big, not too small.
Exactly. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine there's a single fly buzzing around on your window.
Hmm?
You want to kill the fly.
Okay. I hate flies. Let's get it.
You could use a fly swatter that is narrowly tailored. It hits the fly, but it doesn't break the window.
Right. Simple, effective.
Or you could use a sledgehammer.
That would definitely kill the fly, but it would also destroy the window, the wall, and probably the whole house.
Exactly. The sledgehammer is not narrowly tailored. In the sign case, the town of Gilbert used a sledgehammer. They banned all these little church signs just to make the town look a tiny bit tidier. The court said, no, that is way too much. You're breaking the window to kill a fly.
I love that analogy. So the government has to use a fly swatter. They have to use the smallest possible rule to solve the problem, and only if the problem is huge.
You've got it. That's the super strict test.
Okay, so that's signs. Signs are pretty harmless. But what about things that are actually scary? What about something like, say, violence?
Ah, now that brings us to another famous story. This is the case of Brown v. Entertainment Merchants Association from 2011.
This was the one about video games, right? I remember this.
Yes. The state of California was worried. Lawmakers saw these new realistic video games, games where you run around with guns, games with a lot of blood.
Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, games like that.
Exactly, those games. And California said, this is bad for children. This is teaching them to be violent. We need to protect them. So they passed a law. The law said you cannot sell or rent violent video games to anyone under 18.
Now, hold on a second. As a parent, that sounds like a pretty good idea.
Well, that was their argument.
I mean, we don't let kids buy alcohol. We don't let kids buy cigarettes. Why on earth should they be allowed to buy a murder simulator?
And that was California's exact argument in court. They said, violence is poison for the mind. We're just stopping kids from buying poison.
So what happened? Did they pass the super strict test?
They failed.
Yeah.
Miserably.
They failed. But how? Isn't protecting kids from harm a huge reason? A compelling interest?
Protecting kids is a huge reason. The court agreed with that part. But they stumbled on the first step. The court asked a simple question. Is violence a special category of speech that we can ban? Or is it just a topic?
And what did they decide?
They decided violence is just a topic. Think about it. Think about books. Is the story of Hansel and Gretel violent?
The witch tries to cook the children in an oven and they push her in instead. Yeah, that's terrifyingly violent.
What about classic books like the Odyssey or the Bible?
Full of wars, battles, plagues, killing, all of it.
Exactly. The court said, we have never had a rule that you can ban books just because they have fighting in them. Video games are just a new kind of book. They tell stories.
So the government can't step in and be the parent.
That's the heart of it. The court basically said, look, it is the parent's job to decide what games their kid plays. It is not the government's job to be a super parent for everyone. California couldn't prove that video games actually cause kids to become violent. They just had studies that showed a small link, a guess. And you cannot take away a fundamental right based on a guess.
Wow. So that golden rule is incredibly strong. The government can't ban a topic, even if that topic is murder and violence.
Correct. But
I knew there was a but coming.
there are some things you simply cannot say. There's a small, very specific bad list.
The bad list.
These are the red lights. These are a few categories of speech that the Constitution does not protect at all. If you say these things, you can go to jail.
Okay, lay it on me. What is at the top of the bad list?
Category number 1, obscenity.
Obscenity. Now, be careful here, because I think a lot of people, myself included, have always thought obscenity just means swearing, using the F word.
No, that's a common mistake. In the law, obscenity means something very, very specific. It is about sex. Hardcore, illegal sexual material.
But wait a minute, pornography is legal in the United States. People make it, people buy it. It's a huge industry.
And this is where it gets really confusing for everyone. Pornography is generally legal. Obscenity is illegal.
So how on earth do you tell the difference? Where is the line?
It is very, very hard. For a long time, the judges didn't even know. There was a famous case where one judge said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
I know it when I see it. That's not a rule. That's just a feeling. How can anyone know if they're breaking the law?
It's a terrible rule. Everyone agreed. So in 1973, in a case called Miller v. California, the court finally made a checklist. We call it the Miller test.
Okay, a checklist. I like checklists. Let's go through it. Imagine I made a movie. How do I use this test to know if my movie is illegal obscenity?
You have to ask 3 questions, and the answer to all 3 questions must be yes. If you get even one no, your movie is legal.
Okay, got it. All 3 have to be yes. What's question 1?
Question 1. Does the average person applying contemporary community standards believe the work, taken as a whole, appeals to the prurient interest?
Whoa. Prurient interest. That is a dusty old word from a spelling bee. What does that mean in simple English?
It means a sick interest, a shameful, weird, disgusting interest in sex. Not just, oh, that's sexy, but something that makes the average person in your town say, that is just wrong.
Okay, so it has to be sick, not just sexy. Got it. What's question 2?
Question 2. Is the material patently offensive? Which means, does it show sexual acts defined by state law in a way that is clearly, obviously shocking and disgusting?
Okay, so it has to be sick and shocking. What is question 3? This feels like the important one.
This is the most important one. Does the work, taken as a whole, lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value? We call it the SLAPS test.
Lacks serious value, so it has to have 0 value.
Exactly. Does it have any artistic value, any scientific value, any political value at all?
So let me get this straight. If I make a movie that is very shocking and very sick by community standards, but it's actually a serious documentary about, I don't know, the biology of reproduction.
Then it has scientific value. It passes the test. It is not obscenity. It is legal.
Or what if I make a movie that's shocking, but it's a serious piece of art telling a historical story?
Then it has artistic value. It's legal.
I see. So to be illegal obscenity, it literally has to be worthless trash. Just disgusting, shocking, sick, worthless trash with no other point to it.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very high bar to meet. That is why almost all adult movies you might see are legal. They might be trashy, but a court would likely say they have some tiny bit of entertainment value, so they aren't worthless.
Okay, but even if it's legal, I can't just open an adult movie theater right next to a kindergarten, can I?
No. That is where something called zoning comes in.
Zoning, like drawing lines on a city map.
Yes. The city cannot ban adult theaters completely. That would be illegal. But they can say, you cannot put that theater here in a residential neighborhood. You have to put it over there in the industrial park, far away from schools and churches.
And that's allowed.
That's allowed. They aren't banning the speech, they're just regulating the secondary effects, like crime or lower property values.
Okay, so obscenity is on the bad list. What else is on there?
This is the darkest one, child pornography.
Oh, absolutely. No question.
And this is completely different from obscenity. For child pornography, there is no three-part test. There is no checklist. It is always illegal, always a full red light, zero exceptions.
Why is the rule so much stricter there?
Because there is a victim, a real child. When someone makes that material, a real child is being terribly hurt in the process.
Yeah.
The government has a huge reason, the most compelling interest possible, to stop it.
So even if someone tried to argue, but my terrible movie has artistic value.
It does not matter one bit. If a real child was hurt to make it, it is a crime, period. The Supreme Court has said even just keeping it in your own house is a serious crime.
That makes total sense. Now, I saw a note in our research about fake pictures. What happens if a computer makes the picture? What about AI or cartoons?
This is a new and difficult area. But the Supreme Court did look at this in a case called Ashcroft, and they said, if the picture is made entirely by computer and no real child was ever touched or used, then you cannot ban it under the child pornography laws.
Because there's no victim. The whole point of the law is to protect real kids.
Right, but,
yeah,
and this is a big but, be very careful. If you try to sell that fake picture and you tell people it's a real kid, you can go to jail for the lie. The government calls that pandering. They don't want anyone creating a market for this awful stuff, real or fake.
Okay. I think we can move away from the dark stuff. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about fighting.
Category 3 on the bad list, fighting words.
Fighting words. This really sounds like something you'd say on a playground. Them's fighting words.
It kind of is. The rule comes from way back in the 1940s. The idea is simple. Some words are not really speech. They are not an idea. They are like a punch in the face.
Okay.
If I scream them right at you, inches from your face, they are so insulting that you have no choice but to immediately hit me. It's an instant provocation.
So if I use those specific words, I can get arrested for speaking.
Yes. But this category is tiny now. It is almost never, ever used successfully anymore.
Why not? I mean, people scream at each other all the time. Road rage, protests.
Because the Supreme Court has made it very clear that being offensive is not the same as using fighting words. Let me tell you maybe the best story in all First Amendment history. It's the story of the jacket.
The jacket. I'm listening.
This is 1968. The Vietnam War is raging. There's a young man named Paul Cohen. He's only 19 years old, and he is very against the war. He's angry that the government is forcing young men to join the army.
The draft.
The draft. So he takes a plain jacket, and on the back of it, in big letters, he writes a very bad word. The F word.
He writes the F word on his jacket. What did it say?
It said, F the draft. And he takes this jacket, and he walks into a public courthouse in Los Angeles.
A courthouse? He wore a jacket with the F word on it in front of judges and police officers.
He did. And as you can imagine, the police arrested him immediately. They charged him with disturbing the peace. He said, that is offensive conduct. There are women and children here. You cannot use that dirty word in public.
I mean, I get it. It's extremely rude. You don't do that.
It is very rude. But the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, let him go. The jacket is protected speech.
Why? I don't get it. He was using a dirty word in a government building.
The court asked a very deep and important question. Who decides what words are good and what words are bad?
Well, the government. Society.
The court said no. Justice Harlan wrote this beautiful, famous line. He said, one man's vulgarity is another man's lyric.
One man's vulgarity is another man's lyric. Wow, that's poetic.
It means that sometimes you need a so-called bad word to show how strong your emotion is. Think about it. If Paul Cohen had written a jacket that said, I strongly dislike the draft, would anyone have even noticed?
No. That sounds weak and boring.
Exactly. The F word carried the emotion. It showed the depth of his anger and his passion. The court said, we cannot cleanse the English language. We cannot force everyone to talk like polite robots. The anger, the offense, that is part of the message.
So because he wasn't screaming it right in someone's face.
Right. That's the key. He was just walking quietly down the hall. People could look away if they were offended. He wasn't trying to start a fight with one specific person. So it was offensive, but it wasn't fighting words.
That is amazing. You actually have the constitutional right to be rude.
You have the right to be offensive. It's a cornerstone of the whole system.
Okay. But what about being more than rude? What about being dangerous? What if I'm not just trying to be offensive, but I actually want to start a riot?
This brings us to part 3, danger and threats.
I've heard an analogy about this, the famous one. You cannot yell fire in a crowded theater.
Everyone uses that line. And it's a good starting point. It means your speech can't create a panic that gets people trampled and hurt. But the actual legal rule today is a lot more specific. It's called incitement.
Incitement. That means starting something bad on purpose.
Yes, starting a lawless action, like a riot or an attack. The famous case that set the modern rule actually involves the KKK.
The Ku Klux Klan, the racist group.
Yes. This was back in 1969. A KKK leader in Ohio named Clarence Brandenburg invited a TV news crew to his rally out on a farm. He was there in the white robe, they were burning a cross, the whole thing. And he said some truly terrible things on camera.
What did he say?
He said a lot of racist things. And then he said, the government is suppressing the white race. And he said that it's possible that there might have to be some revengeance taken.
Revengeance, that's not even a real word.
No, he meant revenge. He was clearly hinting that the KKK should attack the government in the future. The police saw this on TV, and they arrested him for inciting violence.
Good. He sounds like a dangerous person saying dangerous things.
But the Supreme Court let him go.
Wait, why? He's the leader of the KKK. He's talking about revenge. He's standing next to people with guns. How is that not illegal?
Because of something we now call the Brandenburg test. The court made a very important distinction. They said, you are allowed to talk about violence in the abstract. You are allowed to praise the idea of revolution.
You can say the government deserves to be destroyed. That's allowed.
Yes, that's allowed. It only becomes illegal incitement when it meets two very specific conditions. First, you are advocating for violence that is imminent.
Imminent. Okay, that word means right now.
Exactly. Not someday we should take revenge. Not next week we should plan something. It has to be, let's go burn down that police station right now. Pick up that rock and throw it through that window. And now W.
Okay, so it has to be immediate. What's the second condition?
It must also be likely to happen.
Likely. So it's probably going to happen.
Right. Imagine a crazy man standing all by himself in an empty field screaming, burn down the city, let's have a revolution.
Nobody is listening to him. Nothing is going to happen.
Exactly. It is not likely. So his speech is legal. He's just a guy screaming. But if that same man stands in front of an angry mob of 1,000 people and he's holding a lit torch and he points at the mayor's house and screams, burn it down.
The mob is ready. The torch is lit, it's imminent, and it is very, very likely to happen.
Correct. That is illegal incitement. That is a red light.
So the KKK leader, Brandenburg, he was just talking vaguely about revengeance in the future. He wasn't telling his followers to go attack someone that night.
Precisely. The law protects the abstract idea no matter how ugly, but it stops the immediate spark that lights the fire.
Okay. That covers riots and mobs. But what about scaring just one person? What about a stalker sending threatening messages?
That is a different category called a true threat.
A true threat.
If I walk up to you and say, I'm going to kill you next Tuesday, that is not protected free speech. That is a crime. The government can stop me to protect you from being terrorized.
But what about jokes? People say stuff like that all the time, especially on the internet. I'm going to kill you for posting that movie spoiler. They don't actually mean it.
That is the incredibly difficult part.
Yeah.
How do you know what's in the speaker's head? The Supreme Court just looked at this very question last year in 2023. The case was Counterman v. Colorado.
What happened in that case?
A man sent thousands and thousands of creepy, disturbing Facebook messages to a female musician. She was terrified. She stopped performing. She was afraid to leave her house. She absolutely believed he was going to hurt her.
Okay, sounds like a threat to me.
But the man said, I'm mentally ill. I didn't mean to scare her. I'm just lonely. I thought we were having a conversation.
So he claimed he didn't know he was being threatening.
Exactly. So the court had to decide. What's the rule? Do we just look at the victim's fear? If a reasonable person would be scared, is that enough? Or do we have to look into the speaker's mind?
I would think the victim's fear is what matters most. If she's terrified, it's a threat. End of story.
The court disagreed. They said no. To send someone to jail for speech, you have to prove they had a guilty mind. You have to prove the speaker was, at the very least, reckless.
Reckless? What does that mean here? Careless?
It means he was aware that there was a substantial risk that she would be scared by his messages, and he sent them anyway. He basically didn't care if he scared her or not. If he was truly just delusional and had no idea he was being scary, he might not go to jail for making a threat.
That is a really high bar. It seems to protect the speaker a lot, maybe more than the victim.
It does. The American legal system is very, very protective of speech. It really does not want to accidentally punish someone for a clumsy joke or a misunderstanding.
Okay, let's shift gears again. We've talked about violence. Let's talk about lies. Can I use my words to destroy your reputation?
This brings us to part 4, defamation.
Defamation. That just means telling lies about someone to hurt them, right?
Yes. If I go on television and say, the host of this show steals money from the bank every Friday, and it is a complete lie, and because of my lie, you lose your job, you can sue me for a lot of money.
I would definitely sue you. I absolutely do not steal money.
Good to know. But here's the big twist. In America, the rules for suing someone for defamation depend entirely on who you are.
What do you mean by that?
The law divides everyone into 2 groups. There are private people, like you and me, and there are public figures.
Public figures. So politicians,
Yeah.
movie stars, famous CEOs.
Yes. People who are famous in the public eye.
Okay, let's do the first one. Let's say I'm a private person, I'm a librarian, nobody knows me, and the
Yeah.
local newspaper writes a big story full of lies about me.
It is relatively easy for you to sue and win. All you have to prove is that the newspaper was negligent.
Negligent. That means they were sloppy.
Exactly. They were careless. They didn't check their facts. They got something wrong that a reasonable reporter should have gotten right. It was a mistake, but a bad one.
Okay, so sloppy journalism about a private person means I win money. Now, let's switch. What if I'm the President of the United States? Or Taylor Swift? And a newspaper tells a huge lie about me.
It is much, much harder for you to win. The wall you have to climb is incredibly high. To win a defamation case, a public figure has to prove something called actual malice.
Actual malice. That sounds really evil.
It is. This rule comes from a massive landmark case called New York Times v. Sullivan. The rule is, the famous person must prove that the person who told the lie knew it was a lie when they said it.
So it's not enough that it was a mistake.
Not even close. If the newspaper just made a mistake, even a big, sloppy mistake, the president loses the case. The newspaper has to lie on purpose. Or they have to be so incredibly reckless that it's like they were closing their eyes and ears to the truth on purpose.
Why on earth is the rule so hard for famous people? That seems totally unfair. If a newspaper tells a huge lie about the president, shouldn't they be punished for it?
Well, think about how a democracy is supposed to work. We want people, especially reporters, to criticize the government. We want them to dig into the president's life and expose problems.
Sure, that's the press's job.
Right. But what if the president could sue a newspaper for every single tiny mistake they made in a story?
Reporters would be terrified to write anything critical.
They'd be terrified. They would stop writing tough stories. They would play it safe. They would self-censor.
So we make it really hard for powerful people to sue so that the press has breathing room to do its job, even if it messes up sometimes.
Exactly. The Supreme Court said we, as a country, have decided to accept that sometimes some false things will be said about famous people. That's the price we pay so that the truth can be told about the government.
That is a fascinating trade-off. Safety for the press over perfect reputation for the powerful.
It is. It's at the heart of free speech in America.
Speaking of things that get published, let's talk about ads. Commercials on TV, billboards. Do commercials have free speech?
This is part 5, commercial speech. And this gets let's call it a medium light.
A medium light, like a yellow light, not green, not red.
Exactly. It's in the middle. The government can control advertising more than they can control your political speech, but they can't just ban it for no reason.
Why is it different? Why does it get less protection?
Because the main goal of advertising is to sell things and make money. And the government has a strong interest in making sure companies don't lie and trick people into buying bad products.
So rule number 1 for ads is what?
No lying. If you sell a pill and you advertise this pill cures cancer and it's really just a sugar pill, that is fraud. That is not protected speech. You go to jail.
Okay. No false advertising. And rule number 2.
The product you're advertising must be legal. You can't put up billboards for illegal drugs, for example.
Makes sense. But what about advertising for legal things that are bad for you, like cigarettes or alcohol?
This is where the government often gets in trouble by going too far. There was a big case about this called Lorillard tobacco.
Tell me about it.
The state of Massachusetts wanted to stop kids from starting to smoke. A very good goal, right?
Of course.
So they passed a law. The law said, no tobacco billboards within 1,000 feet of a school or a playground.
1,000 feet? That's what, 2 or 3 city blocks?
It sounds pretty reasonable on the surface. But then the tobacco companies took out a map of a city like Boston, and they started drawing circles. a 1,000-foot circle around every single school, and a 1,000-foot circle around every single playground.
And what did the map look like?
The circles overlapped everywhere. There was almost no place left in the entire city where you could legally put up a tobacco sign.
So in trying to make a small rule, they basically banned all the signs completely.
Exactly. And that meant that adults who have a legal right to smoke and see ads for tobacco couldn't see the signs either. The Supreme Court looked at this and said, no, this law is too big. You cannot treat adults like children just to protect children.
So the government has to find a different way, a way to protect kids without totally silencing the message to adults.
Precisely. The test they use is called a reasonable fit. The law has to be designed to fix the problem without causing a bunch of other problems. And this law wasn't a reasonable fit, it was a sledgehammer.
Okay. Let's talk about the people who actually give us the news. The media. I feel like in movies, reporters have superpowers.
A magical press pass.
Yeah. They flash a pass and they can walk past police lines. They can keep their secret sources safe forever. Is any of that true?
Mostly. No. Really. No superpowers.
The phrase in the Constitution, freedom of the press, sounds like it gives special rights to reporters. But the courts have said, again and again, reporters are just citizens. They have the same rights as you and me, no more, no less.
So if a reporter breaks into a senator's office to steal a secret file to publish,
that is breaking and entering, and they go to jail. The First Amendment gives you the right to publish the news. It does not give you a special right to break the law to get the news. What about protecting their sources? That's a big one in movies. The reporter goes to jail rather than reveal who told them the secret.
that comes from a real case called Brandsburg v. Hayes. And the Supreme Court said that if the police or a grand jury are investigating a serious crime and they ask a reporter, who told you this information? The reporter must answer.
They can't stay silent and protect the source.
No. The Constitution does not have a reporter's privilege. You have to testify, just like a plumber or a teacher or anyone else would have to testify if they witnessed a crime.
Wow, Hollywood really got that one wrong.
They often do. It makes for a better movie, I guess.
Okay, one last big topic. The internet. This is everything now. Is the internet treated like TV? Or is it treated like a book?
This is maybe the most important legal decision for our modern world. Back in the 1990s, when the internet was new, the government tried to clean it up. They passed a law to ban indecent words and pictures from the internet, just like they do on broadcast TV.
Because kids might see it.
That was the reason. But in a case called Reno v. ACLU, the Supreme Court said a huge, loud no.
Why? Why is the internet different from TV?
They said TV is based on scarcity. There are only a few channels, from 1 to 100. It's a limited public resource. And TV is an intruder. You turn it on and it blasts into your living room. You and your kids can be surprised by it.
Okay, but the internet?
The internet is infinite. It has unlimited space. Yeah. And more importantly, you have to click. You have to type in a web address. You have to actively go looking for the content. It doesn't just appear on your screen by accident.
So the internet is more like a giant library.
Exactly like a library. And we don't go around burning books in the adult section of the library just because a child might wander in there by mistake. We trust the parents to watch their own child.
So the internet gets the highest, strongest level of free speech protection, the full green light.
It does. And that decision is the reason the internet is the wild, free, and sometimes messy place it is today.
We have covered so much ground today, from little church signs to the KKK, from violent video games to the New York Times.
It's a very big map with a lot of roads.
Let's do a quick, simple recap for everyone listening.
Okay, let's do it.
Rule number 1, the golden rule. The government cannot look at the topic of your speech. They have to be neutral.
Unless they can somehow pass that impossible, super strict test.
Rule number 2, the bad list. There are a few things that get no protection. Obscenity, which is the super sick, worthless stuff. Child pornography, which is always illegal. Fighting words, which means starting a punch. And true threats, which is terrorizing people.
And incitement, which is starting a riot right now. Don't forget that one.
Right. Rule number 3, lying. If you tell lies that ruin a normal person's life, you pay for it. If you tell lies about a famous person, you only pay if you were lying on purpose.
That's the actual malice rule.
And finally, ads and the media. Ads can be controlled more than regular speech. The internet is free, like a library. And reporters are just normal people who have to follow the same laws as everyone else.
That's a perfect summary.
So why does all this matter? Why should we care about all these complicated rules from old court cases?
Because in many, many countries around the world, the government decides what is true. They decide what history you're allowed to read. They decide what news you are allowed to see.
They basically cover your ears and blindfold you.
Yes. The U.S. system is designed to be the exact opposite. It says, we trust you. We trust the people.
Yeah.
We believe you are smart enough to hear bad ideas, to hear racist ideas, crazy ideas, stupid ideas, and to reject them yourself.
It's the marketplace of ideas. Let everything out in the open.
Exactly. We let the bad ideas into the market so that the good ideas can compete with them and win. We don't hide from them.
I have one final provocative thought for you to end on.
Let's hear it.
All of these rules we talked about, every single one, they stop the government, they stop the police, they stop Congress, they stop the president.
True. The First Amendment starts with the words, Congress shall make no law. It's all about the government.
But today, in our world, who really controls what we see and say? Is it Congress? Or is it a social media algorithm?
That is the question.
If I post something on Facebook or X or TikTok and the company deletes it because they don't like my opinion, the First Amendment doesn't help me at all, does it?
It does not. They're private companies. They're not the government. They can make their own rules. They can ban you because they don't like the color of your shirt if they want to.
So my final thought is this. We have these amazing, powerful, beautiful rules to protect us from the government. But the government isn't the one running the town square anymore. A handful of private companies are.
That is the great free speech challenge for the next 50 years. How do we keep the spirit of these rules alive when the microphone is owned by a corporation, not the public?
Something to think about.
Keep asking those questions.
And keep speaking your mind. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Goodbye, everyone.